Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. 2 more hours to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern time, and a sample of everything really here in this second hour. Major League Baseball recap from a busy Tuesday around the diamond. All 30 clubs in action. 15 games yesterday. Into the second week of this Major League Baseball season, now that everybody's played at least double-digit games, have the markets for the rest of 162 moved? We'll tell you about it later on in this second hour. Kasey Hudson joins the show. On the ice we go. Just over a week left of this NHL regular season before the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. And it's NFL draft season as well. 2 weeks away from the 2024 NFL draft in the Motor City. So much to get to here, Donnie, in this second hour.
Yes, it is. We're going to cover all the landscapes out here. And you pointed out, too, it is going to be fun, man. There are so much intrigue in the draft, not because we don't know who is going to get drafted, but where these players are actually going to go and how many quarterbacks will break into the top 5. So a lot of interesting things to get to, but also that does include the NBA and talking about some ratings here, Ben. Ratings what we're all about. This whole industry is about ratings. Why sabotage yourself? It's a perfect segue.
I think our rating's pretty good here in the morning as well, but we're talking about the TV ratings for the 2 national championship games. Sunday afternoon, women's title game between Iowa and South Carolina, a historic number, 18.9 million viewers, the most watched basketball game point blank since 2019. We welcome in that SportsGrid radio audience here to our second hour. Sirius XM channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. It outdrew for the first time in history the men's national championship game that had 14.8 million viewers. That was still up from last year's title between Connecticut and San Diego State. And now, as Donnie said, a 9:20 p.m. Eastern time start for the men's national championship game on a Monday evening is ludicrous. It's ridiculous, but it's been the standard for the last few years. And so I do want to compliment what we are seeing for the inflection point and the historic moment of the women's NCAA tournament and women's college basketball in general. It's been the standard. Even last year, Iowa LSU, 9.92 million viewers, the most watched women's college basketball game in the last 2 decades. Still was behind the men's game by more than 5 million viewers. So that was what we have known, and that was a historic first for the women. And so just because the game is at 9:20 is not the reason the women's national championship game outdrew the men's national championship game for the first time ever by more than 4 million viewers. That has been the standard, and 2 things can live in harmony. So let's continue to celebrate what we are seeing in women's college basketball, but also still hoping that the NCAA and its television partners understand that a 9:20 p.m. Eastern time tip for a national championship game is dumb. Donnie might make jokes now into the offseason about how the NCAA tournament should expand. You should not change the tournament at all. The only 2 changes to the big dance should be Thursday and Friday, round of 64, becoming federal holidays, and a national championship game that tips around 8 p.m. Eastern time on a Monday night in April.
You're right. There's a lot of things to look at also, but you have to take a look at the landscape of everything in sports that is sort of, adjusted. It wasn't long ago, Ben, we're just in the city of Philadelphia. Our baseball game started at 7:35 p.m. every single night. They changed that after a few years because they realized the games were running too long. We have to make adjustments so most people can get here and want to buy tickets and come in. You'll see routinely now 7:05 starts, even 6:40 starts across the landscape. Monday Night Football, which for 20 years ruled the roost every single week, was the biggest rated thing by far on TV. They used to start their games just after 9 o'clock. They made the adjustments. Heck, even take a look at the NBA Finals, Ben. I was just going to look, say, hey, when are they going to play this year? Most of the games start at 8 o'clock coming in and 8:30 at the latest here. And that includes if, like, the Golden State Warriors are in the playoffs. The college football national championship game also moved up. Why are we leaving the college basketball game here? Now, sometimes it takes boneheaded decisions from executives, right? Do you remember, this was, I don't know, it has to be maybe 10 years ago at this point, where the NCAA actually tried to sell us on this. Meanwhile, we already knew the Rose Bowl was holding them hostage for what apparent reason, I don't know. Hey, we're going to make a new tradition here. every single year the Final Four here for the men's football is going to be played on New Year's Eve. We thought that was going to be a joke. They played it out, and I do believe that the sponsors called the very next day, like, if you're going to drop your ratings 50%, we're out, and we want a rate reduction. Now, granted, since the Rose Bowl held them up, I believe it's once every couple years. Now that they do that, they wanted to make that an every single year thing, which was hilarious in itself. But it doesn't make sense. The powers that be know this, Ben. And sometimes, I sort of enter in the equation as the everyman, because if I worked a different job, let's say I didn't have to wake up early, I would have watched the game and I would have enjoyed it. Absolutely. But it does it from a dollars and cents point where you're looking to tell your sponsors, I'm going to get you maximum coverage here. And then when the sponsors see it and go, why are you starting so late? If you started at 8 o'clock or 7:30 or 7 o'clock, I could reach 5 million more people for my ad here. And you're telling me, no, that's not. I guarantee you, Ben, as we sit right here, next year's college championship game for the men's will not be on at 9:20. It will start at 8 o'clock. I will guarantee that right now.
And listen, I know there's the East Coast bias and all of that, and the West Coast has to get home from work and mountain time, and we're going over 4 different time zones. But you can't have a game that starts after 9 p.m. on the East Coast. It dictates the TV markets that we have in general. And I agree with Donnie. After college football got bullied on social media for starting their CFP national championship game at 8:30, and the game would extend past midnight because of how long it was with the commercial breaks we see in college football, they moved it up the previous 2 years to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and the results and the returns have been there. I guarantee you, as Donnie said, next year's national championship game on a Monday night in April for the men's NCAA tournament tips probably closer to 8:10 p.m. Eastern time. Speaking of men's college basketball, go ahead.
Hold on. Let me get one more point on that, too, because I just want to end it on this. That was an epic matchup here, Ben, in college basketball. Like, everybody wanted to see that final. So the anticipation, and your point is very valid from last year's women's game to this year. But I thought the women's game did a great job of highlighting their superstar players all throughout the season. And the crescendo was we got the best player maybe in the history of the sport on a Sunday afternoon in a final. Like, that was the perfect storm. That's why those ratings were higher. But I do believe if the men were anywhere different than a 9:20 start, regardless, they would have surpassed the women. And I love the women's game here, but there's no reason that Connecticut and Purdue would get that rating. And the only reason they got that rating, because of the start. That's it.
Yeah, and my point was just that we've had these same times for the women's and men's national championship game. So it's not just now because the game is at 9:20 why the women's title game outdrew it. I think we're saying the same thing. Speaking of superstars, though, in men's college hoops, Robbie Avila, who, of course, took a nation over at Indiana State. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Bird, Larry Nerd. He is on the move, entering the transfer portal. His head coach, Josh Schertz, also leaving Indiana State for St. Louis University. Somebody's going to get one of the brightest young stars in CBB next year in college basketball. Now, around the Daily Diamond Dash in MLB. Next.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Really at the 2-week point of this Major League Baseball regular season. Full opening day was 2 weeks from tomorrow ago. But every team around the bigs have now played at least double digits. We've seen at least 10 games and some more than that because the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres started very early this year in Seoul, South Korea. The Dodgers have played the most games, and at this moment, DRS, the Dodgers and the Yankees have the most wins, both with 10. The Dodgers on the road yesterday in Minneapolis, and what a pitching performance it was from Tyler Glasnow. Now a perfect 3-0 in a Dodgers uniform, 7 innings of work, shutout ball, only 3 hits, 14 strikeouts as the Dodgers knock off the Twins 6-3. LA wins as a -188 moneyline road favorite.
Yeah, getting those victories here when your starting pitcher is dominant is great for the Dodgers because we're expecting them to get even better in the rotation as the season progresses. And then who knows, Ben, what we're going to get at the trade deadline. Will they'll probably acquire the best pitcher in the available markets. Now you take a look at the Dodgers through the first 14 games, 10-4. That's about what we expected here, but doing it a little bit differently. No RBI here from Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman, which disappointed me because I was banking on Freddie Freeman not going 1 for 5 with 3 strikeouts, but having the ability to plate one of those runners. But you get Will Smith recently signed to that big deal. Did you know he's hitting 400 on the season now? And also getting 3 RBI here from James Outman, a younger player who came into this game going 2 for 4 at 175. So he steadily improved his number. I don't know what he's batting at 083 at that point. Goodness. But he strikes. But that's the ability of the Dodgers. This 1 through 9 in their lineup, you never get a break from it because we always look at the superstars up top. But that lineup has depth all the way through it with power and also speed. And the Minnesota Twins, decent ball club here, struggling a little bit in the early season at 3-6, but I didn't get any surprises in this game. Thought the Dodgers were the best team at a reasonable price, but also Glasnow coming over to the Dodgers and pitching extremely well, Ben, that's not a surprise at all. He's been doing that his entire career. The key is just keeping him healthy here, and the Dodgers got a great pitcher the rest of the way.
Yeah, they certainly did, who is perfect in a Dodgers uniform. Again, now 3-0 yesterday, his 4th start, because he started in Seoul. Will Smith, 3-run shot. We also had James Outman, 3-run bomb. All 9 runs yesterday, in fact, scored via the long ball. The Twins hit 3 home runs in the 8th, 2 in the 9th as well, leading us to an over of that total of 8 pregame, finishing with 9 runs. The Mets also had a rally in them yesterday late in the final 2 innings. The Mets played 5 in the 8th and the 9th combined, started by a Pete Alonso 3-run bomb in the top of the 8th. But the Braves do hold on for a bounce-back victory. The Amazons took game number 1 of this set in the ATL. The Braves hold on yesterday for a 6-5 win over New York.
Yeah, the Braves can hit, and you just go up and down that lineup. It seems like, again, we talk about the Dodgers. Maybe the best overall 1 through 9 in Major League Baseball is probably residing in Atlanta. You look at the game yesterday to start. I just talked about the Dodgers. First 3 guys who are the superstars in that lineup didn't produce all that much. But you take a look at Acuna, 2 hits here. Albies, 2 hits. Riley, 2 hits. Followed by Olsen and Ozuna, also had hits there as well. This team is really good. It's a shame we're still waiting. I don't think we got that definitive answer back on Strider here from the MRIs and what they plan to do, which usually good news, Ben, travels extremely quickly here. So I advise that maybe getting checked out for Strider isn't going all that well with 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th opinions right now on what can happen. That's going to be a big deal in the NL race. But the one thing that we do know is if Strider's not out there, you can get picked up by a hot batting lineup, and that's what Atlanta can do. That would be a devastating blow to maybe the best overall pitcher in the National League to be shelved for the entire year and into 2025. But if I'm just looking at the Atlanta Braves right now, they have no issues at the plate, and you're going to get to see a lot of higher-scoring games. Right. Ben, we're not even in hitting season yet. We talked about yesterday, 60 degrees in Atlanta. Wait till that bad boy is 88 degrees with heavy humidity, and that Atlanta Braves lineup is cranking here. Should be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that leadoff spot, Ronald Acuna Jr. does score 3 runs yesterday. So the Dodgers enter the year as a very hefty favorite to win the National League West, minus 550. They've won the division 10 of the past 11 Major League Baseball seasons. Now the Dodgers minus 1,000 to win the National League West. The Braves were nearly a $3 odds-on favorite to win the NL East, now greater than $3 at minus 330. I know we have a Mark the Movement board for those National League division prices at this moment, nearly 2 weeks into this Major League Baseball season. So as it stands, DRS, in the National League West, the Dodgers the only team above 500, the Braves the only team above 500 in the NL East. Everybody in the National League Central 500 or better. The Cardinals entered the year as the favorites. They remain, but it's plus 210. Plus 210 for St. Louis. Bottom price, 5th and longest, is the Pittsburgh Pirates at plus 750. But the Buccos still the best mark in the National League Central, now 9-3, though. They were up yesterday at home in PNC in one of our 2-day baseball games against Detroit before the Tigers rally for a 5-3 win. The Tigers win outright as an underdog in Pittsburgh. They're 7-4. Pittsburgh still now 9-3.
Yeah, that's a good win for Detroit yesterday, but also you're right about that. I was watching that game live. It's like, hey, look at this, a 3-1 lead for the Buccos here in the 9th inning. They hold on, man. They're going to get their 10th win of the season. Well, that didn't happen yesterday, and they dropped to 9-3, which isn't bad. And I just want to preface this by saying, you look at the East, and you brought that up. Yeah, we expect the Braves to be in first place. The Phillies always floundering, some wins, some losses. They don't get it together typically till late in the season. But the one division, the Central, is we sort of bypass that. And you're right. That's pretty incredible that every single team, which includes the Cubs, the Reds, and the Cardinals, the Brewers, and the Pirates, all above at 500 or above here. That's playing good baseball to start the season, and somebody has to win that division, which means, Ben, when you do, you get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, so you get some pretty good prices. You see some of those numbers that you're looking at, you have to remind yourselves again, no matter what happens, one of those teams has to be in the playoffs, and they'll be at home. We'll see how it turns out, but that's fantastic. I was actually hoping for the Pirates to get that 10-2 they could have been if they held on yesterday with a couple-run lead in the 9th inning. Weren't able to do so, but the Central looking like a pretty good division early on here in April.
Listen, a long, long way to go. We're 11, 12 games into this Major League Baseball season. But for those wild card spots in the National League, maybe the Central is going to contend as opposed to the East that has the Phillies and the Mets. You would think the Marlins 1-11, as we'll show you in just a moment. But we start with Corbin Burnes yesterday, who, as a starter now for Baltimore, has been incredible. 3 outings that the Orioles have now won all 3, and Burnes himself 2-0 with a 1.93 ERA. Yesterday, 7 innings of work, only giving up 2 hits and an earned run as the Orioles go on the road to Fenway and win 7-1 over the Red Sox. Baltimore was a minus 138 moneyline favorite, and behind a Burnes beauty on the bump yesterday, Baltimore picks up another win.
Yeah, and how about that? A first-inning home run for Boston, and Corbin Burns said, yeah, that's basically just enough now. He's only allowed one more hit the rest of the way, no more runs, 6 Ks, and only 2 walks. This is what an ace is supposed to do, rejuvenate that top of the lineup, which he has done that. I'm impressed by the Baltimore Orioles, not because you take a look at the 6-4 record and it's not better. It's what the anticipation will be if Corbin Burns is healthy throughout the remaining parts of the season. So you're bringing up young players that you think you can help the team. This is very un-Orioles-like at this point here, and maybe under a new ownership group, when you get down to the trade deadline, you're picking up even more pieces. It's a very bright future here for the Orioles, and that starts with making that acquisition for Burns and him showing him, look, I'm going to be the ace here. Let's follow.
Everybody in the American League East, including the Red Sox, who are still just 7-4 this year, is at 500 or better. But the Yankees off to a tremendous start. They hold off the Miami Marlins yesterday 3-2 for their 10th victory of the year. The Yanks were the favorites in the East before the year got started. Now an odds-on favorite, -125. Reversal for the Houston Astros. They were an odds-on favorite in the American League West. Now it's plus money because the Astros are 4-8. The Mariners are 4-8. Both of those teams have worse marks than the Oakland Athletics, who are 4-7. In the Twins, 3 games below 500 at 3-6. The Guardians, 8-3. The Royals walking off at home against Houston yesterday. They're 7-4. And the Tigers are 7-4 in the American League Central. Now to the final week of the National Hockey League regular season. Next.
I mean, is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I mean, I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, +120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at +260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know there is only 8 days left in the NHL regular season? A week from tomorrow, the regular season comes to a close, and maybe the best postseason in all of sports, the Stanley Cup playoffs, begin. I am Ben Stevens. Donnie Rightside is here. We are awaiting. Oh, she's ready to go. All right, Kasey Hudson joins us live right here on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid as well. Kasey, thank you for being here on this Wednesday morning to set the stage with everything we need to know for this final home stretch of the NHL regular season.
Oh, it's so good to be with you guys again, although Donnie's not going to be happy with me because I did bet against the Flyers yesterday. I had Montreal as my underdog, and I was not expecting that. I'm so sorry, Donnie.
Donnie, would you like to respond?
Yeah. Look, we said 8 days for the regular season to end. Did you know, Ben, the Flyers 8 games without a win here at the biggest moment of their season to try to get the playoff hockey? We're not doing any. We're not having any fun over here. I'm just not having any fun right now. So,
listen, DRS, I am sorry. Philadelphia right now 250-1 to win the Eastern Conference crown. They have not been eliminated, though, in a very competitive race for the final 2 playoff spots of the Metro that we'll detail in just a little bit. But speaking of the Eastern Conference, 2 heavyweights battling it out last night, Kasey, in Boston. The Bruins at top of the Atlantic Division as of this moment, and the Carolina Hurricanes 107 points with a victory last night on the road inside TD Garden. The Canes win 4-1. Is this, Kasey, a potential Eastern Conference Finals preview? Maybe, just maybe?
It possibly could be. I think that what's not being paid attention to as loudly as the Boston Bruins trying to reverse their President's Trophy curse from last season is all the corrections that the Carolina Hurricanes have made and how well that they have applied those methods to the second half of the season. They're so hard to keep out of the scoring column, and most importantly, what they're doing on the road consistently, which last night proved a test to, is tremendous. So it would be fun to watch these 2 teams go at it, but also I would like my Tampa Bay Lightning to knock out the Boston Bruins as well. I'll throw that out there. But the Carolina Hurricanes are hard to stop in the scoring column, and their defense is still top of the charts.
Taking a look here, Kasey, to win the Eastern Conference here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. 6 teams here at a 10-1 price or less. That's the Hurricanes, Panthers, Rangers, Bruins, Maple Leafs, and the Tampa Bay Lightning coming in at that 10-1. If we're looking now before the matchups are solidified for the playoffs, who are we liking here to win the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I have to give some credit to the New York Rangers. I've been on their tail all season long in equivalence to how I've given the Avalanche a hard time. But again, the Carolina Hurricanes are just doing the right thing at the right time. Last year, they had a lot of missing pieces when it came to consistently getting in the scoring column, and their special teams, penalty kill aside, because their defense was strong, was just awful. They could not pick up points when it came to the power play, and they're sitting in one of the top power play units in the entire league right now. So if they continue on this trajectory, they got Anderson back. He's been tremendous between the pipes. We're probably looking at them sneaking up there, but it's going to be between them and the Rangers.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at the Eastern Conference right now. Those 6 best prices that Donnie and Kasey both mentioned, 10-1 or less, all 6 of those clubs have clinched a playoff berth. 2 other teams in the Eastern Conference looking for a spot. The Caps on the road last night in Detroit against the Red Wings in a big victory for Washington. 2-1 on the road last night over Detroit. Kasey, how monumental was this win for the Capitals in their postseason hunt?
Oh, this was huge for the Capitals, and it was slightly understated that this would be the result because you're talking about a Red Wings team that's averaging well over 3.3 goals per game and a Capitals team that's barely getting 3 points per game. But again, they only got 2 goals yesterday. If it's not for Ovechkin and Strome, then this team is probably counted out a little smaller down the charts. So this was a massive win. Lindgren stood on top of his head. I think he had 42 saves out of 43 shots going against him. But that's a lot of workload to have to consistently do to stay in a playoff hunt. Their defense is still going to have a long road ahead of them if they're going up against offensively sound teams. So I think the Caps did a tremendous job last night, but I still think the Red Wings have an opportunity here.
Okay, so if we take a look here at the wild card watch, and Ben, like myself, agrees that playoff expansion, adding more teams into the fold, always adds for more fun here. So when we take a look at the NHL, down the backstretch they come, the Islanders, the Penguins, the Capitals, the Red Wings, the Flyers, all still in it in that wild card race. How does this turn out? So if I ask you today, the remaining wild card teams, what is that going to look like when the season's over? Who's in and who's possibly out?
Oof. This one has been probably one of the most frustrating and exciting wild card tangos in some time. You can't count out what Sidney Crosby's doing for the Penguins, as well as Malkin. I mean, he's sitting there going toe-to-toe with him with making sure this team still puts up a fight. But I think that if the Red Wings can clean some things up and some of the other defensemen along with Seider can get involved, they have a great goaltender when it comes to Alex Lyon. He's been such a surprise for this team. He's sitting at 5.8 goals, saved above average. He has been standing on top of his head for this team, but defense has to help him out a little bit. If the Red Wings defense comes alive just a bit, I think that they're definitely going to punch their card. I think the Penguins are hard to count out because they got knocked out by the Panthers last season, and that left a bad taste in their mouth. But most importantly, I think we're looking at the Penguins and the Red Wings to probably continue edging forward. I am so sorry, Donnie.
That is tough. That is tough. But the Eastern Conference in that wild card race is huge. The Isles, a big win at home last night on Long Island in the New York battle against the Rangers, 4-2, the victory for the Islanders over the Rangers. Now we go out to the Western Conference. We're not nearly as much, Kasey, is up in the air as the Eastern Conference as we go down the home stretch with just over a week left. Only 3 teams that haven't clinched playoff spots that are really still in the hunt for it, or 4 teams, I should say, that have not been eliminated or clinched a playoff spot at this time. We go to Edmonton first, where the Oilers last night were hosting the Vegas Golden Knights, last year's Stanley Cup champs. And for Edmonton, as I try to find the score, and I can't right now, it's on the screen. Oh, this is tonight. That's why I couldn't find the score. That is on me. You love to see it. Love to see it. So a big one in the Western Conference, Kasey, as we preview and not recap. Oilers, Knights. Who gets a victory tonight in Edmonton?
I am slightly leaning towards the Vegas Golden Knights. You're talking about them potentially going up against an Oilers team that may be without Connor McDavid. He's got that day-to-day lower body injury. And while their depth scoring has started to come to life just a little bit, they still probably have one of the weaker contenders when it comes to goaltending. Also, they average about 173 more penalty minutes on the season than the Golden Knights do. The Golden Knights are a lot more disciplined in this category. They don't have the most flashy power play, but they do have better opportunities picking up power play points on the road. Eichel being in charge of that, Marchessault being in charge of that. We've seen Jonathan Marchessault start getting into that playoff form. So if they can draw some timely penalties, they can get on the board. Not to mention is that their trade deadline acquisition, Noah Hanifin, plays so well against the Oilers. 3 points in 3 games, averages 3+ shots on goal. I think that he can pick up a point tonight and help the Vegas Golden Knights potentially pull off a victory. So I'm edging towards the Golden Knights with some of the spotty areas that the Oilers are in right now.
3-game card tonight, Kasey. Late night, 10:30 puck drop. That's Arizona and Vancouver. It's a heavy favorite here for Vancouver at a -250 price and a game total of 6.5. Looking at these games coming down the stretch, how do you evaluate these situations? Because Arizona not going to make the playoffs, Vancouver in the playoffs. Does that change your handicaps on how you approach these games down the stretch?
Ever so slightly. The biggest thing that I would look out for tonight is depending on how the shifts are potentially shortened to keep guys healthy and also safe because, again, Canucks going to playoffs, the Coyotes not so much. The Coyotes kind of want that signature win just to say that they're here to play and they're a team not to be overlooked, but the Canucks need to continue building on the momentum that they have successfully had in the second half of this season. So I love the Canucks money line here. The only chance that the Coyotes would have of sneaking in a victory is if the Canucks get sloppy, let up a lot of power play opportunities because the Coyotes do have a top 10 power play on the road specifically. But I don't see them being that careless and that messy. This is when you got to get in rare form regardless of who you're playing because Coyotes are going to be desperate because they have nothing to play for versus the Canucks who need to continue picking up those points and solidifying their position out west.
Yeah, Vancouver right now in that top spot in the Pacific Division. Of course, Vancouver in Canada. The last time a Canadian team won Lord Stanley's Cup, that was way back in 1993, now over 3 decades ago. Here are the best prices, Kasey, for Canadian teams to win the Stanley Cup this year. The Oilers, the shortest number, plus 850. The Leafs at 14-1, 15-1 for Winnipeg, and 15-1 for Vancouver. For any Canadian team to win the Cup, that's plus 280. Simply, Kasey, the question is this. Is this the year a Canadian team wins the Stanley Cup?
If you would have asked me this 2 months ago, I would have said yes. But for some reason, I'm so reserved here. First of all, why the Maple Leafs are even in this conversation, toss that. It's stressing me out. The Oilers, they come to life in the second half of the season. I'll give them their roses. They deserve it. Winnipeg has kind of had some issues defensively here and there, so I feel like an Eastern Conference stronghold team can probably get the best of them. Canucks would be my best chance for Canada to lift the cup. And again, there's just a big battle in the East right now and teams that are stacking in all units. So I just kind of see it leaning towards the East this season.
Yeah. Listen, when you look at the Stanley Cup odds, it does make sense. 7 of the top 10 on the screen from the United States, 3 Canadian teams there in the top 10 as well. Again, Edmonton, the best price of teams from Canada at plus 850. Kasey, as always, we appreciate the time. Enjoy these final 8 days of the regular season in the NHL, and we look forward to having you on plenty of times throughout the Stanley Cup postseason.
I can't wait to geek out on more hockey with you guys. And Donnie, you can be a Lightning fan.
Yeah. No, look, whoa! Welcome us up. Me and Hulk Hogan. Let's go. Yeah.
All right. Donnie's full in on the Bolts. We love that. NFL draft discussions next.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The NFL Draft, just over 2 weeks away. The opening round on the opening night on a Thursday, April 25th, in the Motor City in Detroit. We will have plenty of NFL Draft conversations over these next 13 to 14 minutes, but we start with some NFL news on this Wednesday morning. First, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they signed their edge rusher, Josh Allen, who they placed under the franchise tag earlier this offseason, just over a month ago, to a big contract extension. Long-term deal, 5 years worth $150 million to make him one of the highest paid edge rushers in the National Football League. 17.5 sacks for Allen in 2023. That was a franchise record in Duval County.
Pretty crazy, too, because you're taking a look at the pressure positions in the NFL, which also get paid high. That's the quarterback, that's cornerback, that's offensive tackle, and now apparently here, defensive ends moving into that quarterback range. Now, granted, you can't do much in the way of defense of, let's just say, covering for 5 to 6 seconds without getting a penalty. So how do you stop the opposing offenses that have great quarterbacks? Get yourself a pass rusher that can create absolute havoc in the backfield, and they're being paid accordingly. Josh Allen's one of those havoc guys. He got paid accordingly. Yeah. It was his time. Good to see no holdout. Get him into camp, and away we go, Ben.
And we just learned some more information about Donnie's favorite game of the year, the Friday opener of NFL Week number 1 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That will be Friday, September 6th. We knew the Eagles would be the team in that game to start. The other team now, as announced just about 20 minutes ago, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers and the Birds in Brazil to start off the 2024 NFL season. It's the day following the opener on a Thursday night that we will have to kick off the NFL campaign. Prime time in Brazil, about an hour difference from Brazil ahead of us from here on the East Coast. Donnie, are you just absolutely thrilled that your favorite team, the Eagles, is starting the year in Brazil on a Friday evening?
No, let's explain this out, too. From an Eagles fan perspective, Is it nice that your team gets called up and you get to play on a national spotlight game in Brazil? Yeah, that's kind of fun. But let's take a look at competitive disadvantages for the Philadelphia Eagles. This was the Eagles' home game here. It's going to be played in Brazil and not at Lincoln Financial Field against a team in the Green Bay Packers that you're expecting to make the playoffs this year, similar to what the Eagles are. So this could be one of those games that could come down to home field advantage late in the season with a tiebreaker going to the winning team. The Eagles would have much rather had this game at home than on the road. Now, number 2, it is a Friday, so Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, that is tremendous here to open up along with a Monday night football game for opening week. But then again, Donnie, right side, the worker here, Ben, which means I'll be in studio for a Thursday. Now I'm going to be in studio on a Friday night here. So they just made my trip a little bit harder. Thank you, Philadelphia Eagles, for more work for Donnie right side, less time to relax, and a competitive disadvantage for my Birds. Hallelujah.
Just no Eagles paraphernalia on the set, please, for PFT. That is all we ask.
Kevin, not allowed to. Me, yes. Yeah.
No, you're good, Donnie. You would look good in that, very much so. Thursday, September 5th, debut of the NFL season in 2024. Kansas City at home. We're not entirely sure the opponent as of this moment, but the reigning Super Bowl champs for a second consecutive year, the Chiefs, will be at home. Friday night, September 6th, Eagles, Packers in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then your full Sunday slate just 48 hours later. Now, just over 2 weeks away from the 2024 NFL Draft, the opening round on the opening night in the Motor City in Detroit, Thursday, April 25th. The Chicago Bears on the clock, and it's pretty much been decided who Chicago is going to take. We'll show you the odds in just a moment, and I love using the odds because although these markets have moved and will continue to move in these final 15 days, and maybe rather drastically, you can start to use the odds for a mock draft. But that was the order of the top 10. The Bears 1, Commanders 2. At 3, it is the New England Patriots. 4, the Arizona Cardinals. 5, the LA Chargers. The Giants, Titans, Falcons, Bears again, and the Jets round out the top 10. Let me ask you this question, DRS. Do you believe there is going to be a team that trades in the top 10? A team that moves out, maybe down a few spots, and a team that moves up the NFL draft order for the first round in 2 weeks from tomorrow?
Yes, a top 10 trade, absolutely here. There's going to be some movers and shakers. Why? Because the quarterback position here, we're getting a lot of those feelings where, of course, we know who the number one pick is going to be. It's going to be the Chicago Bears. They're not trading out. And quite frankly, I don't even think the Washington Commanders and or the New England Patriots are going to trade out here. But the Arizona Cardinals sit in a very good spot for them. If it goes quarterback, which means there's probably still one legitimate quarterback left on the board, they can pick up the phone and make some calls to slide back a place or two for teams like the New York Giants if they fall enamored with one of their quarterbacks who they think could be in the future. So I do think we'll get some movers and shakers. And from a draft perspective, the top 5 to 6, it's a very exciting draft because we know the players that are going to go. We just don't know where they're actually going to go, and we're going to have some intrigue, which keeps it fun.
I have maintained all along that we are going to see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. Caleb Williams at 1, Drake May and or Jaden Daniels in some form or fashion or order at 2 and 3. And you can see the odds for Caleb to be that first overall pick by the Bears. It's a done deal. It's minus 10,000 at this moment. But as we use the odds to do this mock draft for the top 10, Jaden Daniels, now the odds-on favorite at minus 150 to go second overall. Drake May, the short favorite to go third overall to the New England Patriots. DRS, let's start with the quarterback conversation. Do you think it goes 1, 2, 3? And in what order do you think those QBs go?
Here's what I do think it goes 1, 2, 3. The reason why you draft at the top of the food chain here, Ben, is why. Not because you have a great draft. Like, hey, man, we got our quarterback. That's why the Chicago Bears just drafted a quarterback a few years ago, and it can actually improve because their team record wasn't so good. But also keep in mind, they got lucky with an unbelievable trade to the Carolina Panthers. So let's just say it's Caleb number 1. The Washington Commanders sit in an unbelievably good spot for themselves, and also one of those like, oh, no, because we can make that wrong decision. It was like, do you draft Kevin Durant or you take Odom here in the draft, right? You can live with those consequences for the next 15 years if it goes wrong. And quite frankly, new coach, new ownership, new general manager will probably all take place in that time frame if you don't pick the right quarterback here. So let's go with the Commanders. I don't think they can pass up on Daniels. I don't think so. When you have a kid that's athletic, that can be a game changer, won the Heisman, that when your team picks, let's just say the Commanders get up on the podium and announce that they're going with Jaden Daniels here. The fan base loves it. The ownership loves it. The general manager loves it. The team loves it. And the players should be able to fit right in there because, quite frankly, the Commanders had a decent offseason. The reason I bring this up is May is probably going to go third overall to the New England Patriots. I think in that order. But it comes at a time where we were talking about the Chicago Bears being the number 1 overall pick and should they keep Justin Fields. But we always said, Ben, look, if you're a general manager and this doesn't work out in the slightest, you'll never work again in the NFL. So we always knew it was going to be Caleb Williams because if Caleb Williams doesn't work out, Ben, nobody's going to fault, general manager Ryan Pace or Poles. Is it Pace? It's Poles, right? Is it Poles?
Poles. Ryan Pace was before.
Poles.
Now it's Poles. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So you're going to have him say, okay, well, it didn't work out, but yeah, everybody's going to pick it. He'll still be safe. I feel that way about the Commanders. If you pick Drake May and it works out and that's your guy, fantastic. You evaluated correctly and that was the right choice. But I just look at the future of the NFL with the Lamar Jackson types and the athletic quarterbacks, Ben, where you say to yourself, boy, if you passed him up as a Heisman Trophy winner and he lights the league on fire like C.J. Stroud over a Bryce Young, you might not make it as a head coach or in your regime here. I just don't think they can pass over Daniels at number 2, Ben. I just don't think it's possible.
Also, I just want to say, Drake May, highly athletic as well, a guy
Very
that had
good.
his rushing yards props for most of his past season at North Carolina, around 45.5, 50 and a hook. Both very mobile, both incredibly good at utilizing their legs. Of course, Jaden Daniels, the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner. Now, as the draft cycle began, it was Drake May, the odds-on favorite, to go second overall to Washington. That has flipped. It's Jaden Daniels at minus 150. But as you saw there, in the comparison of that next quarterback following Caleb Williams, just 75 cents separates their prices for second overall. Just $1.30 separates their numbers for third overall, where Drake May is the even money favorite to go to New England at plus 100. New regimes for both Washington and New England, by the way. A completely new ownership group for the Commanders. Dan Quinn, the head coach, new OC in Cliff Kingsbury. Of course, for the Patriots in Foxborough, Gerard Mayo takes over after nearly 2.5 decades for Bill Belichick. Now let's go to the rest of the top 10. Marvin Harrison Jr., hefty odds-on favorite to go fourth overall to the Arizona Cardinals. Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver out of LSU, is the favorite to go both fifth and 6th overall. We'll compare these two wideouts in just a moment. Joe Alt, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, favored to go 7th overall to the Tennessee Titans. First defensive player that is favored to be one of the top 10 picks is at 8th. That's the Atlanta Falcons drafting, and it's Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. Roma Dunze for the Bears' 2nd pick in the top 10. The wideout out of Washington is the favorite to go 9th overall, and Brock Bowers, plus 250, 10th overall to the New York Jets. I do always say, the slight caveat in when you bet these draft odds, and I think it needs explaining, if for some reason there is a trade and Marvin Harrison Jr. is drafted 4th overall, but for whatever reason, it's the Denver Broncos making the pick. That's not going to happen, but just to show an example, he would still cash the 4th overall ticket. Doesn't have to be Arizona making that selection. So outside of the quarterbacks, Donnie, how do you view the rest of the top 10 of this 2024 NFL draft?
I mean, we could say the draft really starts at number 2, technically, right? Because we know the number 1 pick is going to be, and then the fun's going to begin. But if we really want to say, okay, let's take the quarterbacks out of the equation. They're going to go 1, 2, 3. Boy, 4 and 5 are such intriguing options because you take a look at the Cardinals. They're not going to go quarterback there, and they have a choice to make. Do we slide back here, or do we take a generational wide receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr., or else we go ahead with the kid from LSU Neighbors to make that decision? Because the problem you have there as well is it's not just let's trade down 1 or 2 spots. Let's just say the Giants drive up and say, look, we got a quarterback that we need, and it's J.J. McCarthy. Cardinals, let's switch. We'll give you our pick, which is going to come in here just a few slots lower at 6. We'll take number 4. We'll give you an extra 2nd rounder. And the Cardinals go, okay, now, we really want a wide receiver, and that's who we were pegging. Well, you take a look at the Chargers. They're not looking quarterback, and if they don't trade out, they probably, after their offseason at the wide receiver position, would love to go get themselves a wide receiver. So it does get tricky, but you can't fault the Arizona Cardinals. They just come out and say, we have our quarterback of the future that's not changing. Let's add an elite wide receiver. That's the perfect match. But I do think you can have a score if a team like the Giants just wants to jump over the Chargers to make sure they get their own quarterback. That could be a treasure trove of picks where you just slide down 2 and take an extra 2 or an extra 3 in that draft, and away you go to try to rebuild your football team. So for myself, I'm looking at the wide receiver positions starting at number 4 flowing through. And again, it's an exciting top 10, which I think gets a lot of movement and a lot of intrigue. You have 2 wide receivers fighting for that top spot, multiple quarterbacks fighting between that 2nd and 3rd spot here. It's great intrigue as we move forward.
Marvin Harrison Jr. minus 600 to be that first wide receiver selected. Malik Neighbors minus 200 to be the 2nd wideout selected in the NFL draft. Donnie said his name. He's the most important piece, the pivot piece of the first round. Michigan's quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. There are 4 players right now with a minus money price to be a top 5 pick. Jaden Daniels, minus 1,500. Drake May, minus 1,350. Marvin Harrison Jr., minus 900. And J.J. McCarthy at minus 280. What does that mean? Well, we know Arizona is not drafting a quarterback at 4. They have Kyler Murray. We do not assume the L.A. Chargers are drafting a quarterback at 5. That is Justin Herbert. So who is trading up to get J.J. McCarthy? That is the move that controls the trajectory of the opening round of the 2024 NFL Draft. And we've got some time to discuss in the next 2 weeks. More on the early line up next.
Is it pretty much cut and dry that NC State is the biggest surprise of the weekend? I don't think anybody's bracket had the Wolfpack going this far.
I think they're going to find a way to keep this one close. And we all know Purdue's tournament history under Matt Painter. They've had a lot of early exits when they've been good teams, and maybe this is the time they'll exercise their demons. It's kind of like when Virginia lost to that 16-seed UMBC.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that I've been able to move to a home that I'm very excited about is it's really cool, and so far just love everybody that I've met at SportsGrid, and I'm just super pumped for the opportunity. Sometimes things that I wouldn't feel comfortable asking, whether it was me playing and just trying to get a tidbit on the golf course and certain thing a player might have learned. Now I'm getting that information because I don't mind asking it.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Ending out this second hour live right here on the early line on SportsGrid on this Wednesday morning. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. A huge NBA slate yesterday. 14 games, 28 of the 30 teams around the association in action. And in the Eastern Conference, it was a lackluster billing for a marquee matchup, but a very impactful game between the two top teams out east, Boston and Milwaukee. The Bucks snap a 4-game skid. They win by double digits at home. They cover as a 3.5-point home favorite. But the biggest news was the injury to Giannis Antetokounmpo, who leaves the game early in the third quarter. It was feared it could be an Achilles injury, now just a calf strain. But that could be a little dicey. A timetable that has been set for Giannis's return of about a week or two. That is going to border with the NBA playoffs fully beginning. So what is the outlook now for Milwaukee in the postseason? That was the question in Fade the Public. You know what the real Fade the Public poll needs to be? Does the public hate the NBA? Our voter turnout for NBA polls needs to really be on the uptick at this time of year, because at SportsGrid, with a healthy Giannis, how far will the Bucks go this season? Most of the public, 43%, saying just to the second round, but only 72 votes. Come on, public. We expect more. Donnie, what do you make of this Fade the Public poll?
Well, the question would be now is that there's multiple polls floating out there that have been voted on multiple times at this point, and our good friend Joe Ranieri's phone blowing up in the morning probably thought he should be on the early line today, but that might be why it's a little bit low. But I do think the public poll itself is pretty good. We're just waiting to see how injured Giannis actually is, but the poll says with a healthy Giannis, how will they go? Which means full blast starting lineup, first round, second round, conference finals, and NBA finals. I picked second round, which is the leader in the clubhouse at 43%. But over the break, I'm going to have to change my opinion on here with maybe an update, because if we could change the poll at SportsGrid, I could change my mind on my own. I could vote twice, people. How do you like that? Yeah.
That's well said. Hour 3 starts in less than a minute.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.